Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Blue Heart Podcast. I'm your host, Lieutenant Joe. So a recognized tool for law enforcement is using informants in investigations, using an informant to provide information, use an informant to work with you, go make controlled buys of things, buy stolen property, working with the police so that we can further an investigation. Informants are valuable tools. They are recognized by the courts. There's just a lot of information, things that we have to do to make sure we properly vet an informant, to make sure that they're credible and reliable, and then we can use them. And anybody can use an informant, right? You don't have to be just a detective or investigator. You could be a patrol officer, and you can develop informants. How far you get to work with them to go do cases, that's up to your agency. But I know we had more officers, patrol officers, flipping people so that they would work with us. And in our agency, we used to allow the officer that flipped somebody to come along on a controlled buy or come along when we did a raid, because then everybody was interested and everybody wanted to do more. Next thing you know, they're flipping as many people as they can. So we're going to talk a little bit about that today. This is more of a training program today. I'm going to try and get the information into you quickly. One of the ways we're going to do that is that I'm going to try and share my screen and make sure that this comes up for you. We have to show all my windows here, and I'm looking for, there we go. We have a PowerPoint here, and I'm going to, let's see, what are we going to do here? Let's go from the beginning. Now you can still see me in the corner over here, but I want you to understand about working with informants, and it's good to keep the information so that if you see this program, you can follow along with the notes. You can play it again and again, and you won't be wrong. For those of you who are listening on audio on Podbean, you might want to take some notes as we go here. All right. So we're going to start out. What's important about working with an informant? What are the things? All right. Well, you all know who I am, so we don't need that. We're going to talk about what an informant is and how they're created, what causes people to act as informants. Why would people do that, right? How to vet your informant and gauge their credibility. This is extremely important for the court. The court, when you go to a judge and they want to know, you're relying on information from an informant, how do we know that it's credible and reliable? So that's important. There's rules for using informants and how to protect your informant because they can get hurt. We want to set rules for that informant. We want to document our informants, and we're going to, using an undercover officer with an informant, we'll cover that real quick, and using an informant in a criminal investigation, and then the important concept of deconfliction. So I'm going to cover that right here, even though it's in the program. Deconfliction is something that means you want to make sure that the person that you flipped and that you're going to use in your investigation is not also involved in other investigations with other law enforcement agencies. Could be federal, state, county, local, or other municipalities. And you don't want to step on somebody's toes. You might be working on a guy for stolen motorcycle parts, and actually he's running a chop shop where they're putting in concealed compartments and the feds are into them. So deconfliction is a way to make sure that you're okay to use the informant without messing up any other investigations. So there's forms in many of our states. If you don't know about deconfliction, go to your prosecutor or district attorney's office and ask them, hey, do we have a deconfliction program and forms I should be using before I start an investigation using an informant? All right. So that's important. You want to make sure you're deconflicted. You don't want to mess up something. We can talk about using an informant in a RIP, or it's a tactical takeoff. We can avoiding the friend zone, right? Getting too friendly with these people, and dealing with members of the opposite sex, setting boundaries with these people. All right, so let's define this. It's right here on the screen, right? Defining an informant in the course of a criminal investigation is a very common and accepted practice, but what exactly is an informant? All right, an informant is a person or several people that work with law enforcement officers and assist in criminal investigations by providing information about people involved in criminal activity. They also provide access to these people, places and things involved in criminal activity that police officers would not normally have access to, right? So they can go places you can't go. So we're going to use the example of drug dealing, fentanyl dealer, heroin dealer, ecstasy dealer, somebody like that. And if you have that problem in your community, and we all do, and you have somebody who you catch with drugs, or you catch them doing a burglary, or you catch them whatever, motor vehicle is very popular. People are going to lose their license. They will often work with law enforcement to save their license. So you might be able to work a deal. The way you do that is you have to speak to your local judge and make sure that judge understands what you're doing. Speak to your district attorney's office or prosecutor's office and make sure they're on board with what you're doing, because you can't make deals, right? You don't make the deal. We got to be crystal clear about that. You never tell an informant, you can never make promises to them. I promise you won't have to, you won't be indicted or you won't go to jail. You don't make those kind of deals. What you do is you go to the judge or the prosecutor in your area and you let them know, hey, I have a guy or a girl that wants to work, wants to do a heroin dealer for us, but they want to get out from under their fines. They don't want to go to jail on their burglary charge, whatever it is. You work that out in advance. And what I'm going to suggest is that you go to that judge before you do any of this kind of work. Make sure your department is on board. Make sure everybody understands what you're going to be doing and how you're going to do it. Then you go to the judge and say, Judge, if somebody's got the license and it's going to get suspended, but they're willing to do work with us to get a drug dealer off the street, would you be willing to help, cancel their fines, lower their fines, or save their license so that they don't get suspended and they're willing to work with us? Once the judge says, yeah, I'm willing to do that, case by case, whatever it is, then you go out and you say, okay, now we're ready to do it. And that's when you use some of these setups, how to set the stuff up, vet your informant, how to document your informant, and all that kind of stuff. So where could we possibly use these people? Where we're going to find them? Drug dealers, burglars, gambling rings, fencing operations, human trafficking networks, or prostitution is out there now. Storage and sales locations for drugs and weapons, as well as critical information and evidence of criminal activity. Somebody might know where the bodies are buried, so to speak. So you want to make sure you get that. An informant is a source. An informant is actually a source of information. There are a couple of types of sources where police can gather inside information. These sources take specific forms. And while they both provide information of criminal activity, they're really different and are viewed differently by the court. So we're going to look at that. The informant is normally a person who has been arrested and charged with a crime or offense. The person arrested may want to find ways to minimize the effects on their life or eliminate penalties for their activity. So they agree to work with the police, provide information or physical activity, go make buys for you or whatever, in exchange for their help with criminal cases. Some of the information informant may be able to offer you: who committed a crime or burglary, right? They know, hey, those burglaries on the west side? I know who's doing them. I can give you that information. Who is selling drugs and weapons and where those items are stored, right? You get a search warrant, you build your case and you go get them. Who's planning to commit crimes? Who's out there doing whatever? And where evidence can be found. As far as providing physical assistance to the police, they can also offer to buy drugs or weapons for you. There's different kinds of setups, and we talk about acting undercover and using informants. We're going to get to that later in this program. This might be part one and part two, because this is a bigger kind of a thing, but you need to know this information so that you can develop cases and use this resource that's out there, informants. They might wear a body wire or otherwise record a conversation with a criminal or introduce an undercover officer to a person involved in the criminal activity. All right. So in some cases, a controlled purchase of something, say a guy's selling heroin and you can't go buy it. You're not an undercover. You've never done that. You don't know the suspect, but this informant does. So what we do is we search the informant completely. We search their car. We give them buy money, right? Usually comes from an investigative fund you have in your agency. You instruct them to go directly to a location. You surveil them the whole time. They go in, they come out, they meet at a prearranged location where you've set up. You follow them there because you got to keep them under constant surveillance from the time they go in to the time they come out and hand you the drugs, because you want to make sure that they didn't stop at the 7-Eleven and buy it from the guy in the 7-Eleven and they told you they bought it from that house. That's the whole idea. All right, so you meet them at the prearranged. They give you the drugs. You search them in their vehicle again to make sure they didn't double dip on you. And then you send them away with instructions, call me every day at 3:00 or whatever it is to stay in touch. And then you've done a control buy. When you go to the next level, you might have them make a couple controls and then have that informant say to the drug dealer, hey, can I bring my buddy Bob Bob's looking to hook up and he don't have anybody, and if he says yes, now you can bring somebody. You often bring an undercover police officer now. And the whole idea is that once that undercover officer is introduced to the drug dealer and buys from them a few times with the informant, now the drug dealer's comfortable with this guy, Bob, and Bob can start going and buying on his own without the informant. So you'll cut the informant out. And the reason that's important is this. In most states in our country, you will not charge the drug dealer with anything that the informant bought. The purchases that you're buying there, no matter what it is, stolen parts, whatever they're selling to you, that's illegal. You don't charge them because then the defense has a right to call that informant and have them go to court and explain that they bought it. So what you do is you use those purchases to demonstrate to the court that, hey, obviously this person's selling drugs. We bought drugs there 3 times. We had phone calls. We had all kinds of stuff. This is not just somebody doing a favor for somebody else, you know? Hey, man, I'm really sick. I don't feel good. I have a lot of pain. I got cancer. Can you give me some heroin? You know, that's not a drug dealer. But somebody that you go to repeatedly and buy drugs indicates to the court, this is a drug dealer. And then you'll be able to, you know, get a search warrant and go on in there with some other factors. And we'll cover those, I think, too. All right. Let's see. What else do we got here? The values. By providing this type of assistance, informants can be very valuable to the criminal investigator, as well as the officer in uniform, since they can help you gather evidence and information you would not be able to get on your own, right? And this can help you. So in some agencies, I know there's smaller agencies where the patrol officer may be allowed to do these kind of deals, or you have a designated drug unit or a drug officer, or you go to a task force. That's why you need to know how to use these informants. But they're very, very helpful. All right. So the informant's motives matter. So this comes to the credibility and reliability that the judges are going to want to know about. It's important to understand what's motivating them, because it's usually a person seeking assistance with a criminal charge. And the courts will look very closely at that. Did this person do this just to get out from under their charge? And then they may have lied. They may have made up things about drug dealing. They may have double dipped on you so that they can, point, hey, this guy's a drug dealer, and he's really not. And we've had that happen in my agency. We had a particular detective who went with a young lady to buy crack back in the crack days. And she went into this apartment and came out with a chunk and did it 3 times. And the officer wrote in their report that they purchased crack cocaine from this individual 3 times using an informant. And they got a search warrant, went in, and it turned out the young lady was going into the building, but not going to anyone. She wasn't really buying drugs. She busted some sheetrock, and she was bringing out chunks of sheetrock that I guess could look a little bit like crack cocaine, to the unexperienced individual that this detective was. And she brought it out and handed it to him. She kept the money. She double dipped them. We went into the apartment with a search warrant. There was no drugs. These people were not drug dealers. So people will try and get over on you. So that's why you have to make sure. You should field test whatever they bring out to you so that you can put that in your report. And many jurisdictions require that you do a field test. We sent somebody in to buy crack cocaine. They came out with a piece of crack cocaine. We field tested it and it was positive for cocaine. Then you know there's actually drugs coming out of the place. All right. So the reasons the informant is working for you is important. Most of the time they're trying to get out from under something, and that is acceptable, because these people, just because they're criminals in other areas or whatever got them locked up in the first place, doesn't mean that they won't work for you properly. They will go in and do the right thing and work for you because they want to get out from under those charges. You have to determine that they're credible and reliable. So how do you do that? Credibility of an informant is based on you giving them instructions and having them follow rules. That's why we talk about setting up the rules. You tell them to call you every day or every other day at 2:00, and they call, right? So then you can document that this person was reliable. They called me. They showed up when they said they were going to show up. They gave you information when you requested it. Then you might find out that, you field test the drugs, and it is drugs. They tell you about the drug dealer and you do the research and it matches what this person told you. You can check with other agencies. So a lot of times you might say, hey, have you ever worked with any other agencies? A lot of these people do. Once they understand, hey, I can get help with motor vehicle charges or drug charge, whatever. They will often work with other agencies, and you can call those cops. Hey, did you ever work with Bob Smith? Yeah, he was a good informant. You're going to document all of that. That shows their credibility, their reliability. All right. So that's what the court wants to see. All right. Verifying their credibility is good. In some places, it's simply called the people. What do we call these people? You'll hear a lot of terms on TV, and you'll hear a lot of different people, use jargon out there. They'll call them a CI, a confidential informant. Okay. And that's okay. A CI is okay. But informant has a very negative term to the public or to the jury or to the judge, right? They don't like informants. People don't like that. So you might want to try calling them what we call them, a confidential source, CS, right? CS, confidential source, is better than informant. That's my opinion. So you might want to do that. So there's another source that police officers can use of information. That's a concerned citizen, right? So who is a concerned citizen? A concerned citizen is usually a person that does not need any help from the police. They're not trying to get out from under charges or fines. They're just a regular person that made observations that they believe involve criminal activity, and they tell you, the police, about it. All right. They might call up and say, hey, I think my neighbor is selling drugs. The cars pull up every day. They run up to the door. I see him exchanging. I see money. And then people run away. It happens all day and night. So this is a citizen who is passing on information to you. Now, you want to do your due diligence and make sure that the citizen is not trying to get somebody in trouble. So how do you do that? You can verify the citizen's information by going out and making observations of your own. Every night between 5 and 7 p.m., cars pull up and they go up. So you go over there in a surveillance van and you sit there and you watch. And now you, with your police eyes, your trained police eyes, you see cars pulling up, going up to the door, doing whatever, doing an exchange that appears to be a hand-to-hand drug transaction. Now you have confirmed what the citizen has told you based on your own experience and training, and it looks like there's drug dealing. So maybe you take off one of those cars 2 blocks away. You talk to the occupants, see if they'll turn over the drugs to you. You lock them up, take a statement from them that they bought it from Bob. With that information, you have a search warrant, almost guaranteed. You'll be going back into that house. All right, so a concerned citizen or a confidential source. 2 different kinds of informants. One is seen by the court. The concerned citizen is viewed by the court as inherently reliable because they have nothing to gain. Right. So it's basically they're just a good citizen telling the police about something they see. You confirm their information by going and seeing it yourself. Right. And it's very inherently reliable. It's called like a dying declaration. When somebody's dying and they say, OK, this is something I did or something else somebody else did, that is considered inherently reliable by the court because they don't believe who's going to tell a lie as they're dying. They're going to clear their conscience and whatnot and die with a clear conscience. So those are the kind of things that we look at. So a concerned citizen and a confidential source. All right, so we covered who these people are. All right, information is power. Both the informant and the concerned citizen are effective tools for fighting crime. In the course of your career, you're going to come across both of them. All right, we use both, but the CS is our goal in this particular course. We're talking about the confidential source because they can help us do a lot of things. So now that we've defined them, where do we find them? Where can we find it? And a great place to find these people, like I said, is when they get arrested. So in our police department, in every jail cell on the wall across from the jail cell, we had signs that said, do you have information about criminal activity? Do you want help with your charges? Ask to speak to an officer. And very often people would see that and go, what's that mean? I can get help with this? Yeah. By doing what? And you explain to them how you can work with the police and exchange for information. We can help you, right? The same thing is that we also had all of our officers, and this was key for the patrols. Once we made it known, we did a training session to talk about using informants, flipping people, how we do it, is that we would say, you get to come along on the control buy, you get to come along on the raid, whatever. That's a great enticement, right? For somebody who wants to learn and do things. So the officers were instructed to, every time they arrested somebody, at some point in their conversation, in their talk track, while they're booking them, hey, is there any information you have that can help us? Because we can help you. We can work that out for you. All right, so that's important to make sure. Motor vehicle, like I said, is a big one for younger people, for anybody, but mostly for younger people. They don't want to lose that license, so they will flip pretty easily if you're charged with something where they're going to lose their license. Obviously, shoplifting is a good one. Possession of drugs is a good one. Depends on the crime. All right. So DWI is not something we can help somebody with, right? Because that is not something that the courts like. You're not going to give up a DWI for anything because that's so societally bad that they won't work with that. So skip your DWIs. They're not going to do much for you. And the other one is domestic violence people. You're not going to do nothing for somebody that beats up their wife or their girlfriend to get them out from under, to get a guy who's selling some heroin, right? And maybe you can make a case that would be good, but I would say no, and society says no. So just about anything else that someone's charged with, you can maybe get them some help. Maybe, lesser jail term, lesser fines, or dismissal of charges altogether. And that's the key. That's what they're working for. All right. So we talked about where we're going to find them. Let's see. What do we talk about this? Okay. So remember, I said, no matter what it is, we as officers do not promise anybody, hey, if you help us out and get us 2 drug dealers, we'll get your fines dismissed. We can't make promises, right? And you got to be upfront with them. That's why you deal with your judges and prosecutors in advance, so you know that they're willing to go along with this. So you say, listen, I will talk to the prosecutor. I will speak to the judge on your behalf if you do what you say you can do, and you can help us with investigations. I will certainly let the judge and the prosecutor know you did the right thing. And very often they will drop your fines. They will drop jail term, whatever it is, whatever you work out. Just be crystal clear with them. You're not the deciding factor. The district attorney, the prosecutor, and the judge make the deals, not the officers. All right. So we covered all of that. We still never make promises. Now let's take a look. Getting everybody on board. I think I covered that, right? Making sure everybody is doing what they're supposed to do. All right. So here's how this normally works, just so you understand working with these informants. You vet them out. You make sure that they're reliable and credible and that they can do things. How many jobs should they do to get help with their charge? Well, we had a rule, 3 for 1. So if they have a charge, they have to do 3 people. Now, if they can only do 2, then you want to go with 2, that's fine. If they got heroin, you get them with a bundle. You always want to go up. You don't want to, I can help you get a guy that sells bags. You don't want bags. You want somebody that's going to sell, 5 bundles or 10 bundles at a time. That's the guy or the girl you want to get to. And that's what you want them to be able to do. So using that informant is important. You lay out the rules for them. Okay. So the rules, I'm going to jump here a little bit and just see if there's anything I want to cover from this thing. And I'm going to stop sharing this and go back just to me and you. All right. So some of these things that we talk about, we deal up. They have to do, 3 people to get help with their charge. We deal up with the amount of drugs, stolen parts, or whatever it is. You get more out of them than they have to offer, right? You never do 1 for 1. You got to go higher. You check it out with the judge and the prosecutor, and then you begin your case. You vet them. You make control buys. You try and get an undercover officer in with them so that they can take over. And here's the difference. Like I said, you don't usually charge the criminal with anything you buy through the confidential source. You only charge them with things that you find once you do the search warrant and you go in there. Then you find the drugs, you charge them with those drugs. This way, the informant doesn't necessarily have to come to court and testify. In most cases, they don't. But if you're charging the criminal with what they bought, they're definitely going to come to court, and then they blows their cover. Everybody knows who they are, knows they were a confidential source for you, and it's a problem. So that's what you're going to do there. The other way, when you include an undercover officer, every purchase that officer makes, you're going to charge them with, because it's a cop actually making the purchases undercover, and the cop's going to go to court. So you can charge them more. That's why you want to kind of transition from the confidential source to an undercover officer if you possibly can. Sometimes you can't. Sometimes you make 2 or 3 buys using a confidential source. You get your search warrant, you hit them, and they got dope and money and guns in the house, and you go get it. And that's good. You lock them up and charge them. It depends on the amounts, with distribution, possession with intent, all that kind of stuff. All right. So protecting these people, this is important. We do not tell anybody who our confidential sources are. We don't go around and tell other people, other criminals. We keep that secret. So when you document them, you should document their pedigree, name, address, phone numbers, contact information, take a photograph of them, and you get to put that in a confidential file, right? Defense does not necessarily have access to your confidential files of informants and confidential sources. But if you need to contact them, you have all the information. If another agency needs their name or contacts, you have that stuff. So we keep that in the thing, but we don't tell anybody who's working for us other than law enforcement, because these people can and do get hurt, right? They can and do get hurt. Normally, the only person who tells that they're doing this is the source themselves. They might tell their friends, hey, listen, man, I'm working with the cops and they're going to help me with my chart. Next thing you know, other people know, sometimes the suspect knows, and then they get hurt. I used a young fellow one time, and he did a great job for us. He had $3,000 in fines for shoplifting. And he said he needed some help, right? One of those signs on the wall. And I talked to him and he says, I can tell you a guy dealing drugs in your rich neighborhood over there. And he's selling 5 pounds of weed a week and ecstasy. And we said, in that neighborhood, it's $1 million neighborhood. Well, the guy was there dealing drugs, but it wasn't street drug dealing. People didn't run up to the door. They went in, had a glass of wine, ate with these people, and bought 5 pounds of weed and 500 ecstasy pills or whatever. It was a different level of drug dealing. And this confidential source said, hey, I'll do this person for you. And we ended up making purchases, got a search warrant, got a ton of dope money. I think we even got a gun, and it led us to another drug dealer who was selling kilos of cocaine, right? And you never know what you're going to find in these things. Well, that guy, believe it or not, told his mother that, hey, listen, I'm working with the cops. That's how I'm not going to go to jail for this, that, and the other thing, whatever he was working off. And his mother was friendly with the drug dealer's mother. She didn't know that her friend's son was a drug dealer. She just, oh, my son, he's not going to go to jail because he's working with the cops. That mother told her son, the drug dealer, and the drug dealer realized he was being done. And they found this guy doing his laundry in a laundromat, and they broke his legs. They busted his face. They almost killed him because he ran his own mouth. So we don't tell anybody who's working for us. We don't publicize any of that. We just keep that to ourselves. We keep it confidential, and we instruct them not to tell anybody. If they tell somebody, it's on them, but they can get hurt. All right. So protecting them is extremely important. So how does this all work out? You vet them, you clear them, you do controlled buys, you do an undercover, whatever you're going to do. And when you make all the arrests and the case is over, now you're going to go to the judge and the prosecutor and say, hey, this person did 3 jobs for us. We arrested 3 bad people. So we would like to get the help that, they wanted. So often what you'll do is you'll go to court, but you won't come in the courtroom, till the court is basically empty. All the citizens, traffic tickets and whatever their arrests are, they're out of there and gone. And the court will continue to record, and you walk in, say, I'm Officer so-and-so. This is Bob Smith. He worked as a confidential source. We arrested 3 different groups of people, very helpful to law enforcement. And we've advised the prosecutor. Then the prosecutor normally says, Your Honor, based on the work that this individual has done for law enforcement, the good of the community, blah, blah, I would move to dismiss their fines. I would move to drop this charge. I would move to save their driver, whatever it is. And that's done. It's all documented. It's on the record, but nobody was there to hear it. Right. So that's how it usually works for these people. I can tell you that informants will often, because they do run their mouths, when a friend gets in trouble, they'll say, hey, listen, I got in trouble one time, a long time ago, and Officer Smith over here at this PD, he helped me out. Why don't you go talk to him? You will have other people. You'll have attorneys bring their clients in and go, listen, he can do something. Can you help him? Right. So we've had all of these kind of things. Informants are a very, very powerful tool. So the last thing we're going to talk about is the rules. The rules. How do you set rules? What are the rules? So we have a form, we have a sheet, right? So joe@pangarotraining.com, joe@pangarotraining.com is my email. So if you email me, I will send you these forms. And on this form, it basically starts out, it's a whole list of rules that they sign off on, right? Because if something happens, they get hurt, there's going to be something comes and looks at you. Did you do the right thing with this informant? Did you instruct them properly what to do and not do? So on this examples, you might see is, you are not a police officer. You are providing assistance to the police. You are not to tell anyone you're a police officer, right? Sounds silly, but sometimes, they will, I'm working with Detective Joe. I'm a cop too, man. No, you're not a cop. You tell them they will not carry weapons at any time. They will not make other purchases of illegal items unless they're doing it because you instructed them to do so as part of your case. You are not to drop my name if you get yourself in trouble with other police agencies. You are to call me every single day at 2 p.m. If you don't call me every day at 2 p.m., I will stop using you. Do you understand that? And all bets are off. You don't get any help. So you can make up any rules that you want them to follow to ensure they do the right thing, don't get themselves in more trouble, don't get hurt, and don't get you in trouble because they went and dropped your name. Happens a lot. You will have people, because they have your cell number, right, and they're going to call you every day at 2 o'clock. Then they get picked up 3 towns earlier. Hey, listen, I'm working for Detective Joe, right? That person should call you and you say, yeah, no, I don't have him out tonight, or I don't have her out tonight buying anything. So lock them up and then let them know they're done with me. I'm not working with them. All right. So I know I went quick on a lot of this stuff, but this is important information for you to understand that working with informants can really help an investigation. We have to do it properly. We have to do it legally. We have to do the right thing, protect them, protect ourselves, so we can go out and lock up bad people, right? And get people to be held responsible for the crime they're committing in your town. And using informants is a very good way of doing that. So I appreciate you all being here. You can look at pangarotraining.com on the website. We have lots of classes. We're also, obviously, we got a lot of podcasts. We have the video is on YouTube. It's Joseph at Blue Heart Webcast. Tell your friends about it. Please subscribe, right? Subscribe when you go there. And audio version, when you're riding around the car, you're sitting at home at night, you want to listen on your phone, it's jpangaro.podbean.com is where you can find us. So remember, everybody, be careful out there. Ours is a noble profession. Do a good job. Using informants is a great way to enhance your cases and your skills. So I thought I was going to do 2 parts on this. I covered, I think, what I want to cover. If you want to email me with questions, I never mind questions. I can help you. And I think next, maybe one of the next programs we do, we'll talk about acting undercover. So how you can act as an undercover. And it doesn't take great skill. It takes patience. It takes courage. And it takes some common sense. All right. So until we meet again, my friends, remember, be a part of the solution, not a part of the problem. This is Lieutenant Joe for the Blue Heart Podcast, brought to you by Blue360Media.com, the greatest publisher for law enforcement, and MedicalEssentialDiagnostics.com. They are a health group in New Jersey, 5 offices. You can go there and get a full health screening at no cost to you, and you can bring 2 adult members of your family with you. So you can stay healthy during your career, and then you can beat up the pension for a long time because you're healthy. So MedicalEssentialDiagnostics.com and Blue360Media.com, where you can get all my books, the interview, the investigation, and there's more to come. Thanks for being here, everybody. I appreciate you watching and listening. We had to stick together for law enforcement. The men and women of the Blue Line are doing the right thing every day, and it's a great career. There's probably nothing better in the world that you can do than help your community. So we'll see you down the road.